Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 196, Millie's Castle Hassle. Millie is a new narrow-gauge engine that works at the Earl's estate at Ulfstead Castle. She enjoys giving tours to the passengers, but dislikes how busy and congested the castle can become. "Keep the rails clear," she cried one morning. "This is no place to stop and chit-chat." "Then why are there water towers here?" asked Gator. "We'll be out of here soon enough," added Sir Topham Hatt. "We just need Logan to show up." "Here he is," shouted Hector. "Welcome back, Logan. Looks like the other railway has been treating you well." "Hello, sir," he replied. "Hello, Gator. Hello, Hector." A few months earlier, Logan had gotten into trouble after he had crashed into the Ulfstead mine while chasing after Sailor John. Now, after spending a few months back on the mainland, Sir Topham Hatt was looking to have him return to Sodor. "First of all," he said, "I want to apologize for my actions a few months ago. It was a stressful time and all. We were preparing for the Christmas party and the introduction of the Earl's new engine, and I didn't give you a proper treatment." "No worries, sir," replied Logan. "I acted rather foolishly myself." "But you didn't," interrupted Hector. "Sir, I've told you countless times what really happened at the mine, and—" Yes, I know," chuckled Sir Topham Hatt. "You already knew this, Logan, but turns out there is something fishy going on with Sailor John. Gator here was also a victim of one of his ploys." "Yes, indeed. Captain Callus wanted all of the Christmas decorations for himself." "Anyway, I want to invite you back to Sodor," continued Sir Topham Hatt. "We have all missed your company dearly, especially Sam. If you need some time to think about this—" "Oh, I'll be happy to return, right now, sir," exclaimed Logan. Sir Topham Hatt laughed. "Well, that settles it then. Welcome back, Logan. And to all of you, if you see that Sailor John running around, be sure to let me know. He's been rather quiet lately. I hope he's not planning something sinister." "Will do, sir," said the three engines. "Logan, I have Rosie on coal duty at Crosby today, so find whatever work you can here at the castle. Tomorrow you'll start shunting again just like before." And Sir Topham Hatt walked away. Logan was ecstatic to be back on Sodor, but whatever work he tried to do at the castle, it always seemed like he was running into the new engine, Millie. "Please, keep the track clear," she shouted. "Sorry," said Logan. "I'm used to working in a tiny yard, not a ginormous castle like this. I keep getting in your way no matter where I go." "New engines are so inexperienced," she said to herself. "Hey, I'm not new," he protested. "Well, yes, I've been away for a while, but now I'm back. And if anyone here is new, then it's you." Millie rolled her eyes. "I have passengers to pull. Have fun with those wagons of yours." "Someone's a little impatient," grunted Logan. "Don't mind her," chuckled Caitlin. "Millie's usually very friendly, but I think she's getting a little tired of the crowds at the castle recently. Once you get to know her, you'll realize she's a really nice engine." "If you say so," said Logan nervously. The next day, Logan left for his new job and a whole new assortment of engines piled into the castle grounds. Millie couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. "It sure is busy here," said Spencer, "but it's nothing a private engine like myself can't handle." But Millie didn't respond. "I said, it's nothing a private engine like myself—" "Oh, I heard you the first time. Who cares if you're a private engine? So am I." "Oh, really?" asked Spencer. "That is impressive. I've never met anyone like me before." "We are quite different," said Millie. "Now, if you'll excuse me—" "Just the opposite. We are very much alike. We private engines have to stick together, you know." Millie rolled her eyes. "And how would we do that, exactly?" "By helping each other out. Making sure we get the proper jobs, of course." "Proper jobs?" asked Millie. "You know, passenger pulling, special pickups, more passenger pulling. I already do that, you know. I give tours here at the castle every day. Well then, you're on the right track, said Spencer, figuratively and literally. Ugh, groaned Millie. I have to go. Very well then. Nice to know you're not stuck shunting dirty coal cars somewhere. We private engines could never be caught doing that. Millie looked at Spencer. And what's wrong with shunting coal cars? She asked. I've heard it's the most humiliating job ever, whispered Spencer. That coal dust gets on your paint and it never comes off. And talk about hard labor. Millie thought back to Logan and how eager he seemed to get back to the coal depot. I don't think it's that bad, she replied. In fact, a snooty engine like yourself could learn a thing or two if you stuck your buffers in a place like that. Spencer was appalled at her suggestion. Dearie me, he spluttered. If you think it would be a great job, then go move those trucks up there. Show me how a private engine is supposed to handle dirty work. Fine, I will, she replied. But, being a private engine, Millie had never shunted trucks before, let alone pulled them. She was very nervous, but she didn't want Spencer to talk poorly about her friends. Millie, what are you doing up there? Asked Stephen. I don't think the Earl wants you messing around with those dirty things. Yeah, just leave them for Skarloey or somebody else, added Connor. It's no trouble, she replied. I can manage. Good luck, called Spencer. This should be fun. But Millie had no idea what she was getting herself into. As soon as she started moving, the trucks pushed her along the rails. Whoa, slow down, slow down! But the trucks wouldn't stop. There at the back of the castle was Duncan. Stop, Millie, stop, he shouted. Let me take them from ya. But Millie couldn't stop and she thundered down the drawbridge, through the junction and ended up crashing into Den and Dart. Coal dust billowed into the air. Oh, not the paint! Not the paint! Squealed Spencer, and he quickly rushed away. My disguise! Cried Dart. Den, find me another box! Quick! Just then, Logan pulled up with Hector and the rest of the coal train. Those don't look like passengers, he said cheekily. Yes, I thought I would try something new today, moaned Millie. Turns out I'm only cut out for coaches right now. You know what they say, new engines are very inexperienced. Millie couldn't help but smile. The mess was soon cleaned up and she had a much greater appreciation for Logan's job. Those coal trucks aren't something to mess around with, she said quietly. I bet you've had your fair share of spills. Not really, teased Logan. It helps when you have some friendly coal trucks like Hector on your train as well. Well, those trucks were rude, said Millie. They wouldn't stop pushing and shoving me. But those trucks didn't have faces, whispered Hector to Logan. Shh, just let her be, he chuckled. And the two new friends talked about their newfound coal problems long into the night. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 197, Henry Gets Stumped. It was springtime on the island of Sodor, and the sawmill was a busy place. Henry and Wilbert were working to clear the forest of downed trees that had fallen over during the winter. Sam had decided to see what all the fuss was about. Now, why do you get rid of all of the dead trees? He asked curiously. They can still be useful in the forest, even if they're not living, right? I'm sure the squirrels don't mind their presence. Well, we do it for two reasons, replied Henry. One, the forest looks much better without them. It's hard to tell now, but come summer, those dead trees will stick out like a sore buffer. And two, it helps prevent forest fires, added Wilbert. Exactly. Fortunately, we've never had a fire on this part of the island, but if one were to ever break out, it would be hard to stop. I see, said Sam. So what happens when you bring all of the trees here? Everything's cut up and made into other goods, replied Wilbert. The dead trees aren't any use to us or the forest, so we send them down the line where they can be really useful again. Doesn't that make you sad, Henry? I've heard how much you like the trees in this area. That's definitely not my favorite part of the job, admitted Henry, but it has to be done, and so we will do it. Plus, the forest will look amazing this summer when it's been thinned out a bit. You wait and see. Just then, the foreman walked up. We've got trouble in the forest. I've just gotten a call and the loggers say some lorries are impeding their work. Henry, Wilbert, will you go take care of this? Of course. I bet they're looking to cause some trouble, and we need to stop them. Soon, Henry and Wilbert arrived in the heart of the forest where the loggers were assembling the dead trees by the track. There were the 3 lorries, looking just as troublesome as always. We'll cut you a great deal, shouted Lorry 3. You give us these trees here, and you guys won't have to worry about cutting them down at the sawmill. What do you say, eh? What are you 3 up to? Asked Henry crossly. We're trying to work here, and you're distracting us. Be off, will you? We're not looking for trouble, said Lorry 1. We just want these dead trees. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Well, you can't have them, replied Henry. We have a deal with the sawmill, and they won't be too pleased if we don't give them any trees to cut up. Oh, come on, Henry. We all know how much you love the forest. Cutting up these trees must be so painful for you. We can relieve you of that guilt. Just let us take these trees away and you can forget all about it. Henry really didn't like cutting up the trees, and he was tempted to give in. But just then Wilbert spoke up. You heard him, he shouted. There's no deal. These trees belong to us. Yeah, that's right, agreed Henry. Move on down the road. The 3 lorries grumbled crossly. We'll be back, and you'll change your mind, they growled, and all 3 quickly sped away. Thank goodness you jumped in, said Henry quietly. They almost made me change my mind about the trees, but this is the right thing to do. It absolutely is, agreed Wilbert. We can't give the trees away, otherwise the ThomasWoodenRailway can't deliver them to the top of the sawmill. Now come on, let's get these trees to the wharf. And everybody went back to work. That evening, Henry's train was full of trees, and he made his way to the wharf, where they would be transferred onto the ThomasWoodenRailway. Hello, Colin, whistled Henry. Where's Peter Sam? Isn't he supposed to meet me here? I think he's on his way, replied Colin. Hopefully he won't be too much longer. But to Henry's dismay, Peter Sam never showed up. He waited and waited until Madge finally arrived with some bad news. There was a rock slide at the incline, she said. The whole line is blocked with debris. Nobody will be able to get through until tomorrow morning. This made Henry cross. And to think the lorries were willing to cut me a deal, he complained. I could have avoided this if I had just taken their advice. It's just one train, said Colin. If you leave them here for tonight, I'll make sure it gets to Peter Sam first thing in the morning. Fine, said Henry. Will you 2 watch these trees tonight and make sure nobody steals them, especially those horrid lorries? Will do, said Colin and Madge. Henry whistled happily and puffed away to Vickerstown sheds where he was going to spend the night. Wilbert was already there, along with some less friendly engines. I hear your forest is being cut down, said the big city engine. Tragic shame, really. Once that's done, what other useless job will you do to fill your time? It's not a useless job, objected Henry. It's a very important one. Ah, yes, laughed Spencer. Cutting down trees. Top priority indeed. Don't listen to them, Henry, whispered Wilbert. They're too ignorant to understand. Let's try and get some rest. Meanwhile, the lorries had been talking to Sailor John about how to get those trees back from Henry. He completely rebuffed us, grumbled Lorry 2. He didn't even give us a chance to explain why we wanted them. "Henry suspects something then," said Sailor John. "If he won't give them to us, then we'll have to find our own trees. I need that wood to make more crates to hold my dynamite. Ya hear me?" Of course, said Lorry 1. "Well, there are a lot of living trees back in the forest. I'm sure nobody will notice if we cut down a few of them." "Then get on it," said Sailor John. "The sun be rising soon, and I can't afford to get seen by one of Sir Topham Hatt's engines. Get the job done tonight, and fast." The lorries quickly rushed over to the forest and began working on their plan. They didn't have any tools, so 2 of them decided to reverse into the trunk and try and uproot the whole tree. "Hurry," whispered Lorry 1. "The sun will be up at any moment." Back at Vickerstown Sheds, Henry and Wilbur were preparing to leave bright and early. "I didn't sleep a wink last night," groaned Henry. "Mr. Big City Buffers over there snores worse than Gordon. It's going to be a long day." Meanwhile, the lorries had managed to push 2 smaller trees down, but they needed a third, bigger one for their haul. It was proving to be a very troublesome project, though. "This one won't budge," shouted Lorry 3. "I bet it's got roots stretching to Knapford." "There's no time to switch to another tree," said Lorry 2. "Give it one more go." Just as the 2 lorries pushed against the tree, Henry puffed out of the tunnel right into Lorry 1's flatbed. He instantly derailed and went straight into the big tree behind the lorries. It fell over into the back of their truck beds. "Ha ha ha! Thank you very much," they laughed, and slowly rolled away. "No, get back here! That's a perfectly good tree! Look what you've done to it!" "Oh, look what I've done to it!" Henry's front was badly damaged and the stump was in worse shape. Eventually, he was pulled back onto the rails later that day. "What a miserable morning," he said sadly. "Those lorries tore down 2 beautiful trees, and I helped finish this one off." But Wilbur was smiling. "It's not as bad as you think it is," he chuckled. "Those lorries didn't get very far with their awkward load, and they ended up leaving it just around the corner. And the loggers were saying they could save the saplings from these trees and plant them as soon as we're ready." "That is some good news," said Henry. "I guess Sam was right after all." "About what?" asked Wilbur. "Remember, he said trees could still be useful even when they're not living." "Oh, right. I couldn't remember what he was talking about. You had me stumped there for a second." Henry looked over and began to chuckle. "Oh, too soon?" "Not at all," he laughed. "Hopefully I'll be the only accident the forest sees this year. Knock on wood, that is." Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 198, Quarry Quest. The Sodor China Clay Works is a busy place, and the company was looking to expand. Using dynamite purchased from Sailor John, they had blasted a new line of track to the top of the mountain where more resources could be found. Bill and Ben were excited at the possibility of a new adventure. "There could be anything up there," shouted Ben. "We could find dinosaur bones, maybe an abandoned castle, or even buried treasure." "I think all of those things have already been discovered," teased Bill. Just then, Derek rolled up. "There's been a change in plans, Ben. You're to go get repainted at once." "Congratulations," said Boko. "Looks like the recall at the paint factory is finally over." But Ben was a little upset. "Now I won't get to see what's at the top of the mountain," he said sadly. "And I'll need help pushing these trucks up to the top," conceded Bill. "What are we going to do?" "No worries," said Derek. "That's why I brought some new friends along. Meet Marion and Timothy. They'll be working with us from now on." But the twins were unimpressed with the new engines. "Oh, we don't need help," they said. "We can manage without them." "Play nice, you two," chuckled Boko. "I think you better head on your way, Ben, before Sir Topham Hatt changes his mind about your repaint." Ben was finally uncoupled from the train and puffed away. Timothy took his place at the back. "Ready to get to work?" he called to Bill, but Bill looked cross and didn't reply. "He's just upset he can't work with his brother," said Boko quietly. "Have fun, you two." But there was more drama ahead. Bill wanted to be the first engine up the new line, but Marion was given that honor instead. "What's this about?" he asked as she moved into place. "I've been here way longer than she has. I think I should be the one to go up the mountain first." "Marion's here to clear the rails for you," replied Derek. "What if there are loose rocks in the way?" "Don't worry," she laughed. "I'm not going to steal anything when I get to the top." But that was exactly what Bill thought she was going to do. "Not fair," he muttered to himself. Finally, the signal was given and Marion roared up the mountain track. Like Derek had predicted, she did have to remove a few things along the way, but she made it to the top in no time. "Come along, you two," she shouted to Bill and Timothy. "It's beautiful up here. There's a lot to see and do." Bill was eager to go, but Timothy wanted to take a more leisurely approach. "We should be careful," he said to Bill. "The mountain track is very steep, and I think if we go slowly—" "We'll never get to the top," interrupted Bill. "Let's go! Let's go!" And he charged towards the mountain. Timothy was taken by surprise and was dragged along before he could get his footing on the rails. Bill was nearly to the top when he was violently pulled down. He slid to a stop at the bottom of the hill, almost right where he had begun. "You're going to have to be more help than that," he wheezed crossly. "You're just added weight, no different than these trucks here." Timothy felt terrible. "I didn't know we were going," he said breathlessly. "Come on, Bill," said Boko. "Give Timothy a fair shot, and I'm sure he'll prove to all of us he can do the job." Reluctantly, Bill started up again, and this time Timothy pulled, or rather pushed, his own weight. They made it to the top without any problems. "See, I told you I could do it," he panted proudly. Bill looked around. There wasn't as much at the top of the mountain as he had been expecting. "This is it," he cried. "It's just a circle and some leftover dynamite. Where is the buried treasure or the castle ruins?" "Oh, they're all here somewhere," said Marion. "You just have to do a little searching first." And with that, Marion dropped her rocks and a stone split open, revealing a perfect fossil on the inside. "Wow, dinosaur bones are pretty neat," said Timothy. "Yeah, I guess that is pretty cool," admitted Bill. "Sorry I was a little impatient." That night, the engines traveled back down the mountain with some quarry rocks as their haul. "Good first day," chuckled Boko. "We'll see everybody back here again tomorrow." And the engines puffed away to go to sleep. A few hours later, the 3 lorries pulled in and looked at the train. "It's not fair," growled Lorry 3. "We did all the hard work. We brought the dynamite from the stand and basically carved the line up the hill. And we weren't even the first ones up there." "The engines always get the good stuff," added Lorry 1. "We deserve something." "Then let's go get it," said Lorry 3. "We can drive to the top of the mountain and take anything we see of value. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a fair share of what's found." The lorries agreed to the plan and set off. Lorry 2 was the first one to drive up the mountain and soon reached the top. "Okay," he yelled down. "It's pretty dark up here, but I think I see some dinosaur bones we could sell to the museum." Lorries 3 and 1 soon joined him. "We've got to work fast," said Lorry 1. "Sunrise isn't too far away, and the engines will be back soon." Just then, Ben puffed in. He was looking for Bill so that he could show off his new coat of paint. Instead, there was only an empty quarry with no engines in sight. He said. "Everybody must be sleeping at the docks." Just then, the rock containing the fossil fell and landed right on the track next to Ben. He looked up and could see something moving at the top of the mountain. Ha ha, said Ben quietly. I bet Bill's up there looking for goodies. I think I'll go give him a scare with my new colors. Oh, nice going, shouted Lorry 3. You dropped the one thing of value up here. I didn't mean to, exclaimed Lorry 1. It's really dark. I can't see anything. Just then, Ben made it to the top of the mountain. Boo! He yelled. Rah! They screamed in surprise, and in the ensuing chaos, Lorry 2 plummeted over the edge and onto the rocks below. Let's get out of here, shouted Lorry 1, and they raced down the track. Oh, that wasn't Bill, said Ben. That sounded like the lorries, but there were only 2 of them. Where did the third one go? The next morning when the sun rose, it was much easier to see what happened. Lorry 2 had fallen off the top of the cliff and landed on his side at the bottom. That is quite a fall, murmured Timothy. I'm surprised he's still in one piece. And to think that wasn't the first time he's taken a dive like that, chuckled Derek. This is all your fault, shouted Lorry 3 to Ben. You scared us and made him run off the edge. Well, you 3 shouldn't have been snooping around late at night, said Bill. And considering this fossil was at the top yesterday, I suspect you guys were trying to steal something before Ben arrived. I think you better drag your friend away before Sir Topham Hatt sees this, advised Boko. And that fossil isn't yours or ours or anybody's. It belongs in a museum where everyone can view it. We'll be back, said Lorry 1. This isn't over. You wait and see. Your new paint must have given them quite a scare, chuckled Bill. I think so, laughed Ben. I'm happy to be back in my old colors, and now that we look the same again, we can play all the tricks we want, especially on these 2 newbies. Oh, we didn't quite think that through, whispered Derek. Let the games begin once again, shouted Bill, and all of the engines couldn't help but laugh. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 199, Double-Decker Wrecker. While Bertie the Bus is a fan favorite on the island of Sodor, his nemesis and arch-rival Bulgy is not. The 2 vehicles often clash during work and play, and it sometimes makes for very awkward encounters with the passengers. Hey, look at me, toots, shouted Bulgy one morning. I'm the king of the road. 2 levels, all for your enjoyment. No thank you, said the passengers politely. We're going to take Bertie instead. You're choosing that single-level snail over me? Pathetic. You're not worth the trip anyways. Get lost. The passengers were quite offended. I'm so sorry, apologized Bertie. Bulgy is being extra grumpy today. Please, step inside and I'll remove you from this madness. And he did just that. The engines were horrified at Bulgy's behavior. Why does he treat the passengers so poorly? Asked Logan. Who knows, replied Edward. We tried to shield them from the worst of Bulgy's mouth, but you can't win them all. The station master was extremely upset. You either start talking nicely to the passengers or leave, he ordered. You're making us look like a bad railway. Huh, chuckled Bulgy. You're already there, pal. The station master was not amused, and the engines were relieved when Bulgy finally pulled away. Yeah, shouted Logan. Go bug somebody else. And that's exactly what Bulgy did. He knew if Sir Topham Hatt got word of his behavior, the controller of the railway would surely punish him, if not send him away. He hung out by his old bridge on Duck's branch line for a few days to let things cool down. But by the end of the week, he was back in full swing, this time with Arlesburg Junction as his target. Well, look who's arriving, announced Mike. It's a big double-decker bus, and I bet he's got lots of tourists on board. Duck and Oliver looked at each other and groaned. Chuckled Bulgy. Miss me, you two? Go take a drive in the ocean, countered Duck. We don't want you here. Make me, waddle face, and I'm going to stay as long as I like. And by the time I'm done here, all of your passengers will be mine. Just then, Bert puffed up. Well, look at this, he said. It's a double-decker bus. Out of my way, you toy trains. You're a disgrace to your kind. If you're still going to build these archaic things, at least make you full size and impressive, not these little kitty things I could run over. Bert stared in horror. I'm here to take your passengers, every single one. And if you try and stop me, I'll smash you right up against that dynamite stand where you'll go boom. Mike and Bert were scared stiff. Never had they ever encountered someone so terrifying. Right then, said Oliver eventually. I'll go pull my trucks, and Bulgy, you try and take over the railway or whatever it is you mentioned. And with that, everybody quickly went back to work. They don't think I'm a threat, seethed Bulgy. Oh, they'll regret that. They'll regret that for sure. The next day, Bulgy returned and was looking for trouble. He spotted Frank taking a nap in a siding and decided to play a trick on him. He quietly rolled up and gently pushed him onto the turntable, where it promptly became jammed. What? Gasped Frank. How did I end up here? What's going on? Oh, not again, said Bert. Frank, you must have moved in your sleep, and now you've gotten me stuck here. It wasn't me, I swear. I had my brakes firmly locked on. I'm not going crazy, am I? I think you're losing it, chuckled Bulgy. I recommend they take you completely apart to figure out what's wrong, then just leave you that way forever. You had something to do with this, insisted Frank. I know you did. With Bert stuck on the other side of the turntable, Mike was called upon to pull the passenger train. All right, 2 down, 1 to go. Soon the entire Arsdale Railway will be brought to a halt, and the passengers will have no one to choose but me. As soon as Mike pulled out of the yard, Bulgy quickly darted in front of him. He began harassing the passengers and pulled in front of the train, which slowed its progress. Move, you big red thing, shouted Mike. This is no time for games. At the top of the hill, Bulgy slammed on his brakes and brought the train to a halt. Mike's wheels spun helplessly. You gotta try a lot harder than that, you weakling, laughed Bulgy. He revved his engine loudly. Then there was trouble. Mike backed up to get some momentum and angrily shoved Bulgy down the line. Something inside his motor broke, and he felt his wheels begin to roll faster and faster. Hey, what's going on? Stop! Stop! Bulgy had over-revved his engine and his brakes were shot, leaving him helpless against his surging wheels. He smashed into trees, crashed into rocks, and was overall creating a huge panic on the rails. Bulgy is out of control, exclaimed Paxton. Alert the nearest signalman. All of the trains on the main line were soon stopped in case Bulgy veered onto the rails. Gordon was mildly infuriated. I can't believe I'm being halted because a runaway bus is on the loose, he exclaimed. This is an outrage. Just then, Bulgy came up and sideswiped his tender and coaches, leaving huge dents and scrapes on them. Oh, you despicable machine, he cried. Bulgy was causing chaos everywhere he went. He blew through fences, ran onto runways, and broke through crossing gates, leaving carnage and destruction behind him. I need to stop, he panted loudly. Where's a place I could get stuck? Oh, I know, the bridge. Bulgy managed to direct himself towards the bridge he had gotten stuck under many years ago, but was unable to bring himself to a complete stop. Curse you for rebuilding that thing, he shouted. Meanwhile, Frank had been rescued from the turntable, and Mike had just puffed back with his train. Oh, good, said Bert. You've finally gotten rid of that nasty bus. Yes, I did, said Mike proudly. He wouldn't stop annoying me, so I gave him a push in the right direction, so to speak. "Well, you didn't do a good enough job," said Frank. "He's back and out of control. Look at him tearing up everything in his path." Desperate to stop running, Bulgy threw himself into the pile of dynamite where he finally came to a stop. His wheels continued to spin until he eventually ran out of gas. "Well, somebody did end up in the dynamite stand," chuckled Oliver. "Time to go boom, is that right?" "You've laid down quite a path of destruction," agreed Duck. "Just wait until Sir Topham Hatt sees this." And the engines puffed away. Bulgy was stuck, broken, and humiliated. "That was quite a show," said Sailor John. "I guess your controller won't be too pleased when he finds you like this. Or I could hide you away and get you repaired in exchange for a few favors regarding me dynamite here. What do you say?" Bulgy looked sadly around. He didn't have much of a choice. "I'll do anything not to let Sir Topham Hatt find me like this," he muttered. "You got a deal." An evil grin appeared on Sailor John's face. "Welcome to the crew, me hearty." Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 200, Freddie at the Ready. One early morning on the Skarloey Railway, the engines had just awoken when Sir Topham Hatt walked up. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Good morning, sir," replied the engines. "I wanted to come here myself and congratulate you all on a magnificent summer. We've had a record number of visitors to the railway this year, and the rave reviews keep flooding in. You should all be very proud of yourselves." The engines couldn't help but blush. It was rare that Sir Topham Hatt openly praised them like this. "However, I have some other news to deliver. My duties as controller of the Sodor Railway continue to grow every day, and it appears the bigger engines need more help and attention than you do. Therefore, I've decided it's time for you all to have your own controller." The engines were shocked. Sir Topham Hatt had always been the man in charge, and now he was abdicating his duties to another person. "Well, this is quite a surprise," said Rheneas. "Who is going to be our new controller?" "Well, I was hoping to introduce him to you all this morning, but he was supposed to meet me here, and I don't see him yet. I guess that will have to wait until another day." Just then, a tall, lanky man came running up. "I'm so sorry, Topham," he gasped. "I had a flat tire on my bicycle, and I had to catch the bus and run the rest of the way here. I know it's extremely unprofessional of me to be late on the first day of work. And oh, bother, it appears I've worn the same suit as you. Terribly sorry, sir." Sir Topham Hatt laughed. "Don't worry, it looks quite good on you, Peregrine. Everyone, meet Mr. Percival, your new controller." "Hello, sir," said the engines. "Even though Mr. Percival will be running the day-to-day operations on this railway from now on, I'll still be keeping an eye on things. So no funny business. That means you, Duncan." "What? What did I do?" he stammered. "You've got no proof it was me. I'm innocent, I swear." The other engines giggled. Sir Topham Hatt turned to Mr. Percival. "Good luck, and I'll see how you're doing in a few days from now." And Sir Topham Hatt walked away. "All right then," said Mr. Percival. "First thing you should know, I'm a stickler for the rules. Safety always comes first. But most importantly, let's have some fun together, shall we?" "I think that's a great idea," said Skarloey, and the rest of the engines murmured in agreement. "Excellent. Now I'll do my best to learn your names as fast as possible, but for now, I'll just call you by your numbers. Let's see, number 3 and number 4. You two run the passenger trains today. Numbers 1, 2, and 6. You're on incline duty. And number 7, go and get me a report from the engine that runs the steamworks." The engines whistled happily and set off to do their work. Freddie quickly puffed away to his destination, but he soon realized that Ivo Hugh was following him. Hi back there," he called. "Where are you off to today?" "Oh, just some silly errand to the steamworks and back," he replied. "What about you?" Same thing, actually. I think you misheard the new controller. I'm the one who's supposed to go talk to Victor." "No, that's my job," insisted Ivo Hugh. "He said that number 7 should go." "And I am going," countered Freddie. The two engines eventually stopped at the wharf. They were becoming increasingly frustrated with each other. "Look at the side of my cab," ordered Freddie. "What does that look like to you?" "I can't see the side of your cab from here, but I know for a fact that I have the number 7. "You both do," shouted Colin. My, what a ruckus. "Now let's move on, shall we?" "What do you mean, we both do?" asked Freddie. "Yes, you both have the number 7 on your sides." "Since when?" asked Ivo Hugh. "Since anybody can remember," replied Colin. "Have you two really never noticed that before?" "Oh boy, just wait until I tell you about Sir Handel and Peter Sam's old names." "We know about that," said Freddie wearily. "I just can't believe this. The whole time on this railway, I thought I was special. Turns out I've been sharing the same number with another engine." "Yeah, this isn't right," insisted Ivo Hugh. "What should we do?" "Well, let's finish our job first and then go talk to Mr. Percival about it." The two engines managed to put their disagreement aside long enough for them to go talk to Victor and Kevin at the steamworks. That afternoon, they returned to Ulfstead Castle, where Mr. Percival was waiting. "Ah, yes, I believe your name is Fearless Freddie, and if I recall, you are Ivo Hugh. See, I'm getting better at this name thing." "Or you could just look at our nameplates," muttered Ivo Hugh quietly. "Sir, there is a problem we need to talk to you about," said Freddie. "Ivo Hugh and I have never noticed this, but apparently we are both labeled as the number 7 engine for this railway. And when you said that number 7 engine should go to the steamworks this morning, we both did, because we didn't know what else to do." I see," said Mr. Percival. "This is a problem. I certainly don't need 2 engines to go do the simple task of checking up on the steamworks. To prevent issues like this from reoccurring in the future, I'll have one of you renumbered, and this problem will be solved." The 2 engines looked uneasily at each other. "Yes, sir, but who should be the one to change his number?" asked Ivo Hugh. "Oh, figure it out amongst yourselves. But by tomorrow, I want only 1 number 7 engine on this railway. Now, have any of you seen an engine named Mac?" Yes, he's right over there," said Freddie. "No, apparently that's Mighty," said Mr. Percival. "I already talked to him, and now I need to find this Mac engine. If I remember from my notes correctly, he and Mighty are very close, though." "Yes, they are extremely close," said Freddie amusingly. "You couldn't separate them even if you tried," added Ivo Hugh, and the 2 engines puffed away. That night, Freddie and Ivo Hugh were still conflicted about Mr. Percival's decision. "Sir Topham Hatt would have never have done that," said Peter Sam. "He understands the importance of names and numbers to engines. Unlike Mr. Parakeet Percival or whoever he is." "I guess you two will have to compete to see who's worthiest of the number," chuckled Sir Handel. "If only there was an easy way to figure that out. Like a race or something." "Well, remember how we used to solve our problems? We would hold that competition. A race around Sodor, remember? That's what you guys should do." But Ivo Hugh and Freddie were a little uncertain. "It's not that big of a deal. I'm sure we can work this out some other way." But Sir Handel and Peter Sam were incessant. "It's how we do things on the Skarloey Railway," they said, "and it will be quite entertaining." Eventually, Ivo Hugh smiled. "It's just a silly race," he said. "You up for the challenge?" "Sure, why not?" replied Freddie. "I'm as ready as I'll ever be." The 2 engines looked at each other's numbers. The following morning, everything would be decided. As soon as the sun came up, Ivo, Hugh, and Freddie were ready for their race. "We haven't done one of these in a long time," laughed Duke. "This brings back so many memories." Rusty was a little more skeptical. "All right, I guess we're going to do this, even though I still think it's pretty pointless. Freddie and Ivo, Hugh, you two are going to race from Ulfstead Castle here to the end of the line at the steamworks and back. The engine that completes the circuit in the fastest time gets to keep the number 7, while the loser has to be renumbered." "Ooh," gasped the engines. "It's not that big of a deal," laughed Ivo, Hugh. "Freddie and I are being good sports, and it's just a friendly competition. Besides, nothing very exciting ever happens on this railway, so this should spice things up a bit." The engines laughed. "What about Mr. Percival?" asked Rheneas. "What is he going to think if he sees engines racing along the line?" "Don't worry," chuckled Sir Handel. "I took care of that last night." On the other side of the railway, Mr. Percival had stepped outside his house when a workman walked up. "Oh, hello there. Where is my bike? You said you were going to fix the flat tire last night." "I'm sorry, sir," said the workman, "but it appears your bike was stolen out of our repair shop last night." "Indeed. Looks like I'll have to take the bus again, and I'm going to be late for the second day in a row." "You stole the new controller's bike?" gasped Millie. "Just for one day," interrupted Sir Handel. "Besides, I had my driver lean it up against Elsbridge Station there, and I'm going to return it tonight when our race is over. So technically, I'm just borrowing it." The engines didn't exactly approve of Sir Handel's behavior, but it was too late to fix anything now. "Are we going to get this race started or what?" asked Duncan. Yes, fine," agreed Rusty. "Who would like to go first? It's a one-way track from here to the steamworks, so we can only have a single engine go at a time." "I'll let Ivo Hugh go first," said Freddie, "just so I don't intimidate him too much with my fast time." "Oh, those are strong words from an engine like you," he laughed. "I will gladly take on that challenge." Ivo Hugh moved into position. Rusty's driver held out his stopwatch in anticipation. "On your mark, get set, go!" And Ivo Hugh was off. He quickly disappeared over the hill. "You three up there," called Rusty. "You have to let us know when Ivo Hugh is heading back this way." "Will do," shouted the engines. Freddie was still confident. He knew that since Ivo Hugh was a younger and newer engine, he was the favorite. But Freddie had traversed the lines on the Skarloey Railway for many years, and he knew them like the back of his buffers. "Experience is going to win over youth," he chuckled to himself. All of a sudden there was a commotion by the station. "Here he comes!" shouted Bertram. Freddie couldn't believe it. Ivo Hugh had run down to the steamworks and back at a blistering pace. He crossed the line and slammed on his brakes. "Wow, what a run!" said Skarloey. "That is a very impressive time," added Rusty. "I will admit, that's going to be hard to beat." Freddie was growing more anxious by the second. "Righto, it's my turn. Let's get this over with." Freddie puffed into position and Rusty counted down the clock for him. On go, he immediately surged forward out of Ulfstead Castle. "I want that number 7, he said to himself, "and I'm going to win it." He sped past the incline at top speed. I've got this, he panted. Up ahead loomed the steamworks, the halfway point in the competition. As Freddie rounded the bend, Toby and Henrietta suddenly appeared and the two nearly collided. Freddie quickly slammed to a stop. "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Toby. "I didn't see you coming there, otherwise I would have let you go." Yeah, please move. I'm having a race and I need to win." Toby quickly reversed out of the way. "Good luck, Freddie," he called. "That number 7 on your side won't let you down." This caused Freddie to suddenly slam on his brakes. "What did you say?" he asked Toby. I always thought it was neat that we had the same number. Reminds me of the old days with my brothers and all. It brings you closer to another engine, you know? What are you doing, Freddie? Asked Kevin. You're going to lose the race. But Freddie had forgotten all about the race. You're right, he said. Ivo, Hugh, and I shouldn't be fighting over who gets to keep the number. We should be celebrating the unique feature that unites us. Exactly, said Toby. Controllers and builders are so finicky about numbers nowadays that you never see coincidences like this. Yes, agreed Freddie, that is good advice. Oh, but what about the race? I have to get going. Me as well, replied Toby. I need to go pick up the new controller for your railway. Apparently, the bus broke down and he needs a ride to work. Oh, that's perfect. Toby, if you could, please delay him as much as possible. I have to go back to Ulfstead Castle and set something right. I don't know, said Toby. It's not in my nature to be late on purpose. Please, just this once. From one number 7 to another? Toby smiled. All right, just this time, I'll take him the very long way instead. And Toby puffed away. Freddie was feeling much better about the whole number thing and started to puff back to the castle. Meanwhile, the engines were still waiting for him to return. Well, there's the time, said Rusty. Looks like Ivo Hugh wins, and by a large margin, too. He gets to keep the number. That was pretty exciting, admitted Rheneas. Now let's get going on our jobs before Mr. Percival shows up. But Ivo Hugh was a bit concerned. Something's not right, he muttered. Freddie should have been back sooner than this. I'm gonna go check on him. Meanwhile, Freddie was casually coasting along the line. I'm sure Ivo Hugh will agree that having the same number makes us unique in a sense. No other engines can claim that. Up ahead, Ivo Hugh had stopped at the incline. I hope he didn't lose his brakes and fly off the rails, he whispered. Oh, I knew this race wasn't worth the hassle. Just then, Ivo Hugh backed down right onto the main line, and Freddie crashed into him, sending both engines off the rails. Oh, there you are, laughed Ivo Hugh. I was worried you went missing. I did a bit of soul searching with the help of Toby, chuckled Freddie. I don't know about you, but this whole race thing was pretty unnecessary. I think we can coexist with the same number. Don't you? I was thinking the same thing, exclaimed Ivo Hugh. I mean, we've been on this railway for years and haven't had any problems until now. We'll just be extra careful to clarify which jobs are for each of us. That sounds like a great idea, said Freddie. And with that, the two engines patiently waited to be rescued, ready to start the next step of their friendship on solid rails. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 201, Hiro and the Heat Wave. It was a hot summer day on the island of Sodor and the engines were suffering dreadfully. The weather was becoming such an issue that Sir Topham Hatt had ordered all engines who were not pulling trains to stay inside so that they would not overheat. Every single shed was crowded day and night with engines looking for some sort of relief. At the docks, even seasoned veterans like Cranky and Salty couldn't stand the temperature anymore. I'm roasting up here, cried Cranky, and the smell of fish is making it even worse. Cranky, move your hook to the left just a little bit more, panted Salty. Why, what good will that do? I'm going to hide under the shadow of that box. Maybe that will help cool me off a bit. I'd give anything to be a boat right now, said Arthur wearily. That water looks so tempting. In fact, I might make a deal with the trucks for them to push me into the ocean. Please take me with you, begged Cranky. I'll swing my hook and catch onto your buffers and you can pull me in. Oh, good. Flynn is here. What's going on? Asked Salty. Is there a fire nearby? No, I've been running around, spraying everybody with water to help them cool off, he replied. And now it's your turn, Cranky. I hope my water guns can reach that high. All of the engines were looking for some type of relief. Hiro was tasked with pulling the waterworks cars all over the island to wherever they were needed. Thank you, Hiro, said Thomas. I noticed these cows weren't looking too good when I puffed by, and I figured they might need some water. We all need some, admitted Hiro. Sooner or later, the water towers are going to run dry, and we'll all be in trouble. That evening, Hiro returned to the search and rescue center so that his cars could be refilled. What's that beeping noise? He asked loudly. Am I hearing things? Oh, the heat really has gotten to me this time. No, it's not just you, laughed Belle. It's the weather tracker. It lets us know what's going to happen to the weather in the future. And what is it saying? Any chance of rain? None, replied Rocky. Just hot and sunny for the foreseeable future. Bother, muttered Hiro. We need some rain desperately. Things only continued to get worse. The heat was so extreme that the rails were beginning to bend and break under the baking sun. Engines were derailing every day, and every night the Sodor Railway repair had to be called in to fix the broken track before morning. We can't continue like this, said Percy. Something's gotta give. Eventually, the passengers found the coaches too stuffy and hot and stopped riding on the trains. With no passengers at the stations, Sir Topham Hatt quickly canceled most of the trains, allowing the engines to rest while conserving as much water as possible. I've never seen anything like this, said Hiro. How long is this going to last? Who cares, replied James. No trains means no grumpy passengers, and I'm fine with that. No trains also means no railway eventually, added Rosie. You know what that means. Buzz off! I wasn't asking for an answer. Why don't you go mess around at Vickerstown instead? Fine, said Rosie. I think I will, and she puffed away. That was rather rude. Are you sure you're feeling okay, James? I'm fine, he admitted. Just hot and bothered, that's all. Oh, so nothing out of the usual then, chuckled Hiro. I would go get the ice delivery cars to cool down, said Stanley, but by the time I got back here, they would be the warm water cars instead. Just then, Sir Topham Hatt walked up. Glad to see that everybody is keeping cool. Hello, sir, said James. How are you doing? Well, I've had to change my suit 3 times today, and the flowers I bought for Lady Hatt wilted before I even got them home, so I've definitely been better. Sorry to hear that, sir, said Hiro. Is there anything we can do to help? That's exactly why I came to see you, Hiro. In a rather, shocking move, Daisy is refusing to pull the milk because of the heat. Something about swerves and fitters' orders. Can you go up to Maithwaite and bring the tanker to Vickerstown before sundown? That's all way across the island, whispered Hiro. But if it needs to be done, then I will do it. Excellent. Now I want you to take it slow out there. Puffing too quickly will cause you to run out of water, and that will cause confusion and delay. But if he puffs quickly, Hiro can get out of the sun sooner, added Stanley. Yes, that's true, but that's why this is such a tricky job. Farmer McCold told me this is the best batch of milk his cows have made all year, and he's not going to let a heat wave stop him from entering it into the mainland market. Hiro realized he had quite the challenge up ahead. I will do my best, sir, and he set off. By the time he had reached Maithwaite Station, Hiro was already looking for a place to take cover. He saw Toby's unoccupied shed over in a siding, and could almost see the cool air coming from the door. It's tempting, he said to himself, but I must complete this job, and he puffed away. With no major trains running, the main line was clear and Hiro was making great time. He had just passed over Gordon's Hill when there was trouble at Marin Station. A piece of track near the airport had buckled and was no longer safe to cross. "I guess I'm going to have to backtrack," he said crossly. "This will make the journey much longer." And Hiro was right. It was growing later and later into the afternoon, and he was nowhere near Vickerstown when he passed through the scrapyard. "You look tired," said Reg. "Been out in the sun too long today?" "You could say that," panted Hiro, "and my black paint isn't helping." But he struggled on. Soon, as the sun began to creep lower, the heat began to go away, and Hiro felt much stronger. "I can do this," he shouted proudly, and he began to pick up speed. Vickerstown Station was nearly in sight when there was trouble. Another piece of track had been damaged by the sun, and Rosie had derailed on her way to the station. Hiro was in such a hurry that he didn't see the hazard and smashed straight into her, cracking the tanker and sending milk everywhere. Hiro was devastated. "I was so close," he said sadly. "Now everything's ruined." But Rosie was relieved. "Thank goodness you ran into me. I was going to be stuck out here all night because there are no other trains scheduled. And you were kind enough to bring some refreshments." "Oh, that was unintentional," admitted Hiro. "But I do agree, that cold milk does feel really good after a hot day." When Hiro failed to show up at the station, Sir Topham Hatt dispatched Harold to go find him, and the two engines were soon put back on the rails. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. I failed at the one job you gave me, and now Farmer McColl's milk is ruined." But Sir Topham Hatt wasn't cross. "Milk can be replaced," he chuckled. "But if you and Rosie had been stuck out here in the sun for much longer, I would have never forgiven myself. And I'm sure Farmer McColl will understand. It's actually impressive that you made it this far in the first place. But there's good news on the horizon. The heat wave is scheduled to end soon, and hopefully we will be able to get all of the trains back and running once again." "That's the spirit, sir," said Rosie. "I think we can agree that it's not worth crying over spilled milk, right?" And the engines began to laugh. After a long day of hard work, Hiro was glad to be back with his friends again. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 202, Cabless Companions. Samson is a friendly tank engine who lives on the mainland but is often seen working on the island of Sodor. He's a very strong engine that can pull long lines of cars, but this also makes him boastful from time to time. "Step aside, Stephen," he shouted one day. "I'll give these passengers a worthy ride for once. Just attach the coaches to the back of my train and I'll do twice the work in half the time." "Would you get moving already?" asked Stephen. "I've told you, Samson, the passengers like it when I go slow around the castle grounds. Not everyone is as fast-paced as you are." Just then, the sun disappeared behind the clouds and thunder could be heard in the distance. "Uh-oh," whispered Samson. "Never mind, I've got to go." Since he didn't have a cab, every time there was bad weather, Samson was forced to go rest somewhere that was covered, so that his crew wouldn't get wet. "This should pass by in a few minutes," he said hopefully. But the rain didn't stop. Fresh off a long heat wave, the weather had turned humid and it poured for days on end. Samson was feeling rather sad after a while. "I know I look splendid without a cab, but this is the terrible drawback," he said to himself. "Show a wheel, Samson," whistled Caitlin. "Why haven't you been fetching my coaches lately?" "This weather, it's not good for my paint and parts and things," he stammered. "That's a lousy excuse. It's time you had a cab built so that you can work all the time. What are you going to do when it starts snowing in the winter?" Samson didn't know what he was going to do, and he didn't plan on finding out. At last, the rain finally stopped, and Samson was able to venture outside again. Across the castle grounds, he could see another engine moving from a shed as well. "I wonder if he's been stuck there during the rain too," wondered Samson, and he quickly made his way over to where Fergus was resting.
Hello there. Seems like you're a cabless engine too.
I beg your pardon, stammered Fergus. Who are you again?
Oh, of course. I am Samson. I work here at the castle.
Yes, I've seen you around, agreed Fergus. Sorry to be so abrupt, but I've been stuck in this shed for a few days because of the rain, and I must go catch up on my work.
I'm in the same predicament, exclaimed Samson. I can't work when the weather's bad because I don't have a cab, just like you.
Fergus smiled. Oh, I see why you came over here, he said. It's tough being a cabless engine. Wouldn't you agree?
Isn't that the truth? Nobody understands our hardships. We have to overcome many more obstacles than any other engine out there. But they just label us as lazy.
You don't say. I've had the same experiences too. I think it's time we tried to change the stigma about cabless engines. Don't you think?
I would be all for it,
said Samson proudly.
First things first, we have to find all of the other cabless engines on the railway so that we can start an organization, a support group, if you will.
The two engines quickly set about searching around the island for more cabless engines.
Well, aren't you a peculiar engine? But what are you doing in the field over there? Did you run off the rails? I'll go get the breakdown train.
No, I haven't crashed, laughed Trevor. I'm a traction engine. I don't run on rails like you do.
Oh,
said Samson sadly.
You look just like my friend Fergus, with no cab and all. My mistake. I guess I'll go check on the mainland now.
And Samson puffed away. Elsewhere, Fergus was beginning his search as well. What are you doing here, Fergus? Asked Ben. We're blasting today, and so you need to leave. We don't want you or your driver to get hit by falling rock. But that's precisely why I'm here, exclaimed Fergus. I'm looking for more engines without cabs. You haven't seen any, have you? I'm looking at one right now and another one in the making, shouted Timothy. If you don't move, Ben, you're going to get squashed by falling debris. Sorry, I don't know anyone else, said Ben hastily, and he quickly puffed away. Bother, moaned Fergus. I guess I wasn't super helpful today. Hopefully Samson has recruited some more engines. But when Fergus arrived back at the castle that night, Samson was nowhere to be seen. I wonder where he could be on such a lovely evening. Uh-oh, are those dark clouds on the horizon? Is it going to rain again? What do you think, Stephen? I don't think so, Fergus, he replied. I think we're all rained out for the summer, and thank goodness, too. I was getting tired of sleeping inside. Just then, it occurred to Fergus. Well, of course, he gasped. Stephen, you're a cabless engine, too. Come and join our group. Wait, what's this all about? You are part of a cabless engine organization? What type of nonsense is that? It's not nonsense. It's a very smart idea. Samson and I are going to spread awareness about cabless engines and how we sometimes need to be treated differently because, well, we don't have cabs and such. Suddenly, Stephen burst out laughing. Ha ha, he chuckled. That is quite the plan you have there, but I'm sorry to say that it's quite silly. Just because you can't go outside when it rains doesn't mean you deserve special perks. You'll learn to get over it sooner or later. But what about you? Protested Fergus. You don't like the rain. I've sat through many a rainstorm in my lifetime, said Stephen sternly. After all these years, don't you think I've earned some pleasantries? Fergus couldn't help but agree. The next day he went searching for Samson when he spotted him in the yard, alongside a couple of engines he had never seen before. What's going on, Samson? Are these your friends?
Glad you couldn't make it, Fergus, he exclaimed. Welcome to the first meeting of the Cabless Engine Committee. Our goal is to help spread awareness about cabless engines on the mainland and on Sodor.
Oh, that's what this is about? Asked one of the engines. I don't have time for this. You said this was going to be quick.
Winston, don't leave just yet, protested Samson. Fergus and I have a lot of good ideas. Just hear us out.
Actually, I think your friend Winston is right, admitted Fergus. This was a nice idea back when it wouldn't stop raining for days on end, but I don't think we're going to gain much traction. I talked to Stephen about this, and he didn't think it was a very smart idea. Just then, Sir Topham Hatt walked up. "What's with all the noise?" he asked. "I was working in my office, and I heard—" "Samson? Fergus? Who are these two engines here?" "Well, technically, I'm not an engine," said Winston. "I'm a track inspection vehicle from the mainland."
"And this is—" "Actually, I don't know your name," said Samson. "Who are you?"
"My name's Neil," replied the old engine. "I used to work here a long time ago. When you pulled me out of that siding and said we were going to Sodor, I couldn't refuse. It's been years since I've run these rails." Sir Topham Hatt was astonished. "I know exactly who this engine is," he exclaimed. "We must get him to the steamworks at once for immediate repairs." Oh, how about you, Winston? Would you mind taking me to the steamworks right now?" "I guess I can," said Winston. "I don't really have anything else to do." "Excellent. Follow us, Neil. We're going to get you repaired." And the two engines rolled slowly away. "Well, it looks like we did end up doing some good," said Fergus. "Granted, our cabless engine club was doomed from the start, but you found an old engine that needs repairs, and Sir Topham Hatt now has a private track inspection vehicle. Sounds like a pretty solid outcome for the first and only day of the Cabless Engine Committee."
"You're absolutely right," agreed Samson. "Just look what two cabless companions can do when they put their minds to something. Now let's go under the canopies over there in case it starts to rain."
And Fergus and Samson proudly puffed away, thrilled to have been able to do some good in a short amount of time. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 203, Furious George. One night on the island of Sodor, George was slowly making his way to his shed when he saw the horrid lorries and Sailor John working at the sawmill. "I didn't know they were employed here," said George. "Must have gotten stuck with the extra late shift or something." But George soon noticed that Sailor John was working quickly, and the lorries were waiting anxiously with their truck beds full. "That's the last of the logs," he whispered. "Now get out of here before somebody sees us. Move it!" And the lorries quickly sped away. George was so surprised at their speed that when he looked back at the sawmill, Sailor John had vanished. "What's going on here?" asked George. "That didn't seem right at all. Why were they in such a hurry to get out of here?" But George was too tired to investigate any further and rolled slowly away into the night. The next day, the grumpy steamroller was up to nothing as usual and decided to stop by Elsbridge Station to listen in on the latest gossip. "Did you hear about the sawmill?" asked Toby. "Somebody stole the logs from the dumping depot last night." "That's terrible," replied Percy. "Those logs aren't just for the taking. Who would do such a thing?" Just then, George remembered what he had seen the previous evening. "I'll tell you who did it," he said. "It was Sailor John and those horrid lorries. They worked quickly and quietly and were gone before anybody had noticed." "Oh, and what's your evidence?" asked Percy. "I don't need any evidence," stammered George. "I was there last night and saw them do the whole thing." "So why didn't you stop them?" asked Toby. It was already in progress when I rolled up, you see. Now would you like for me to tell you more so that this mystery can be solved?" But Toby and Percy weren't convinced. "You're always making stuff up," they said. This is probably another one of your lies or something. And they both puffed away. George was feeling rather insulted. They completely rebuffed me. Why wouldn't they believe me? I mean, I know I'm a shady character from time to time, but I haven't caused any trouble recently. And I'm trying to help them, you know. Oh well, it's their loss if they don't want to listen to me. I'll find somebody else who will. But no matter where George went that day, none of the Injuns would believe him. It sounds true, said Duck, but you've been known to make things up before. Yes, we've been over that, said George hastily. Now will you please just tell Sir Topham Hatt what I've said? We don't want to get into trouble if you happen to be wrong, said Gordon. Besides, I'm a proud express engine. I don't have time to sit and gossip with the likes of you. I suppose I should be going as well, added Duck. Nice try, George. George's eagerness to help the engines had quickly turned to anger. That night he went back to the sawmill to see if Sailor John and the lorries would return. Eventually, 2 of the lorries did show up. Looks like we'll have to come back another time, said Lorry 1. I was hoping they would have brought in more timber today, but it looks like they didn't. We'll be fine, added Lorry 3. All those logs we stole last night can be cut up into plenty of crates for Sailor John's dynamite. Now let's just get out of here and head to the quarry. George smiled. He was definitely onto something, and now he only had to get someone to listen. The following morning, he rolled right up to Knapford Station and stopped on the tracks. George, what are you doing? Asked Thomas. You're going to bend the rails with your big heavy roller. I'm not going anywhere until Sir Topham Hatt comes and talks to me, he said stubbornly. I have some important news to share with him. That is, if he's interested. But the engines weren't amused. Eventually, Hank puffed forward and pushed George right off the rail so that the trains could leave the station. How disrespectful, he spluttered. The one time I actually want to help these miserable engines, they completely ignore me. Well, I'll show them what George the Steamroller is really capable of doing. That afternoon, George made his way to the Sodor China Clay Works, where the lorries were busy delivering more dynamite. I'd like to speak with Sailor John, he said firmly. The lorries looked at each other and laughed. He's not around, laughed Lorry 2. Can we take a message? Yes, actually, you can. Tell him that I saw 3 of his lorries stealing logs from the sawmill, and that if he doesn't want me to go around telling the whole railway about it, he better speak to me in person. The lorries' faces grew serious. You saw that? They gasped. Oh, yes, I did. And I've seen plenty more, too. Plenty more, I say. But don't make me reveal it. Just let me talk to Sailor John and we can come to an agreement. The lorries looked nervously at each other. Fine, said Lorry 3. He'll meet you here tonight. And don't tell nobody about this, added Lorry 2. George was finally feeling rather pleased with himself. I might actually get an audience for once, he chuckled. That night, George sat by himself in the empty quarry. He was beginning to think that nobody would show up, until Bulgy eventually rolled in and Sailor John stepped out. Haven't seen you in a while, said George to Bulgy. You look like a brand new bus. Sailor John fixed me up, he replied. Maybe he can do the same to you. I hear you've been spying on me, interrupted Sailor John. That's a rather measly thing to do, wouldn't you say? I'm a steamroller, countered George. I do measly things for a living. Now what do you want? Asked Sailor John. Money? Gems? Treasure? Because I have it all. Relax, I'm on the same side as you. I don't like the engines and the engines don't like me. And Sir Topham Hatt disregards me as a grumpy, inconsiderate machine. Which is only half true, by the way. If you would just give me some valuable work, I'd be more than happy to keep my silence. A smile crept onto Sailor John's lips. That's my kind of deal, he said. Welcome to the crew, George. I'm guessing you're the type that likes to eavesdrop on other conversations. Is that right? Because your careful listening and vast knowledge of this railway might come in handy one day. Just keep a low profile and I'll fix you up and make ya a really useful steamroller once again. George was beyond thrilled. That's what those worthless engines get for ignoring me, he chuckled. You've got a deal. Excellent. If you have any questions, just stop by my place. Not the dynamite stand. I'm hardly ever there. Try the abandoned mine beside Ulfstead Castle. Will do, said George. Thanks for the opportunity, Sailor John. And Bulgy roared away. Oh, this is fantastic, he said. I finally have a real job, and Sailor John's going to repair me and make me look like a proper steamroller. And hey, ouch! Hey, I'm rolling here. Watch where you're going. Sorry, George, but you can't be on the track in the middle of the night and not expect to get hit. I'll send for help at my next stop. Why, you slimy little caterpillar, seethed George. This is why railways are failing. You'll all be scrap one day, and with any luck, my perfectly paved roads will get the lorries to the quarry here and back faster than any engine could ever dream of. Oh yes, your time is up, silly steam engines. Roads are in, rails are out. Enjoy your final few moments, because you won't be lasting very much longer if I get things my way. Oh, you'll be sorry for ignoring me. Very sorry indeed. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 204, Hugo Takes Flight. The Sodor Airport is a lively place, and Jeremy the jet plane is kept very busy flying passengers to the mainland and back. One morning, however, things came to a stop. Everybody had gathered around the Sodor airship hangar. We have a very special visitor coming to Sodor tomorrow, announced Sir Topham Hatt. I don't want to give away anything just yet, but it has to do with this miniature blimp here. Wow, said Donald. If the rumors are true, you could be looking at some new competition, Jeremy. What rumors? What's going on? I'm not getting replaced, am I? But Sir Topham Hatt still wouldn't say what the surprise was. Jeremy was growing increasingly worried. Do you think I'm slow and way out of date? He asked Harold one morning. Of course not. If anything, you and I are very up to date. Air travel is the future, you know. Keep your spirits up, just like your wings, old chap. But Jeremy was still uncertain. Then came the big announcement. A huge crowd of people had gathered at the airport for the unveiling of the surprise. Do you know what it will be? Asked Butch. I don't know, said Jeremy quietly. I just hope it doesn't replace me. And now, may I finally present to you all, Hugo the Rail Zeppelin. Suddenly there was a huge whoosh over the hill, and a bright shiny engine slid to a stop. The crowd cheered and thunderous applause followed. What on earth is that? Asked Butch. It kinda looks like an engine. And it kinda looks like an aeroplane, squealed Caroline. A rail zeppelin? Questioned Jeremy. Huh, well I've never heard of one. Hugo stood around the airport for hours as people continued to take pictures of him. Jeremy was growing cross, as his passengers wouldn't board because they were too busy with the special engine. At this rate, I won't have time to fly back to Sodor before it gets dark, he muttered. This new engine is quite a nuisance. At last, all of Jeremy's passengers climbed aboard and he was ready to take off. Sorry to keep you waiting, shouted Hugo. I'm more popular than I ever thought I would be. But Jeremy wasn't impressed, and he raced down the runway without a word. The next day there was still a fuss over Hugo, this time with the other engines. What's this on your back here? Asked Billy. Don't get too close, laughed Hugo. It's a propeller, and it will snip your buffers right off. The engines laughed. You are a very unique engine, admitted Daisy. It's so nice to have another rail car on the railway. Say, how are your swaggers and swerves? What? Asked Hugo. Yes, those are very important. If you have any issues, I know an excellent fitter who would be more than happy to make things right. Yes, thank you. Well, I'm sorry to say, but I must be going now. I have many stops around the railway today, and I can't be late. Oh, of course, said Whiff. An important engine like you is always busy, I'm sure. Let's give him some space, shall we? Jeremy had been watching the scene from his hangar and was not impressed. I guess if you stick anything remotely interesting on a set of wheels and call it an engine, everyone will come flocking to see it, he muttered. What's your problem? Asked Caroline. Do you not like this new Hugo fellow? No, it's not that, he stammered. It's just, well, he's clogging up my airport, that's for sure. Oh, that's not the real reason, laughed Caroline. I think someone's a little jealous. I'm not jealous of anything, said Jeremy, and I'm certainly not jealous of whatever that is. At least I can fly, something that Hugo will never be able to do. Oh, whatever. I think he's pretty futuristic and handsome. Caroline, shouted Jeremy, how dare you? Caroline smiled and pulled slowly away. Jeremy still wasn't impressed with Hugo, but decided he was willing to give him a chance. Hello there, he said the next morning. I haven't properly introduced myself. My name's Jeremy. I'm the airplane that lives here at the airport. Nice to meet you, Jeremy. I am Hugo, the world's fastest and only rail zeppelin. Oh, I see. You're one of a kind, I suppose. Say, I'm not super familiar with rail zeppelins and all, so please tell me exactly what is your purpose. Well, I can carry passengers, but you can't pull rolling stock, interrupted Jeremy. Well, no, these couplings are just for show. And your propeller is quite dangerous in crowded areas like stations, yes? I suppose so. I mean, I always try and be careful when I'm around passengers. And you're the only rail zeppelin in existence because... I have a few problems, admitted Hugo, but I am the future, just like this blimp here is to aeroplanes. Jeremy laughed. Well, I'm still here, working and carrying passengers every day, and how many blimps do you see flying around at the moment? Hugo looked up to the sky. Well, it's hard to see because of how cloudy it is. Right, said Jeremy. Well, nice to meet you, Hugo. I have some flying to do, something that I can actually do, and you can't. But feel free to try if you like. Hugo was not happy with Jeremy's comments. I am a rail zeppelin, he said firmly. I am the future, and I can do anything I put my mind to. Later that day, Jeremy returned to Sodor and noticed Nelson and Jack were sitting by the tracks. What's going on? He asked. What are you guys looking for? It's that Hugo engine, replied Nelson. He's been racing around the rails trying to set a speed record or something. He's going very fast, added Jack. So fast that every time he comes over this bridge here, it looks like he's flying. Uh-oh, said Jeremy. That's not good. Look, here he comes, shouted Nelson. Hugo came flying down the track near the diesel works. He rounded the bend and, for a moment, it did look like Hugo was flying, until he crash-landed onto the track and slid to a violent stop. Oh no, shouted Jack. I hope he's okay. Hugo had derailed, but he looked unhurt. Jeremy rolled up to where he lay stopped. I didn't mean what I said earlier, Hugo. You can't fly, and I don't think you should try either. Leave that stuff to the professionals. Oh, you're right, he admitted. You brought up so many bad things about me that I was determined to prove how useful I was. Yeah, that wasn't very nice of me, said Jeremy. I was jealous of all of the attention you were receiving from the passengers and other engines. Truth is, you are a really cool piece of engineering that deserves to have people taking pictures of it. Hugo smiled. Thank you, Jeremy, and you are a very useful aeroplane who does a great job. Even though they had gotten off to a rocky start, things were beginning to look up for Hugo and Jeremy. Let's put all of this behind us, he said. You keep your wheels on the ground, and I'll keep mine in the sky, just like we were meant to. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 205, Merlin the Magical Engine. One day on the island of Sodor, Madge was tasked with bringing a load of scrap to Vickerstown Station. She was supposed to meet Norman there, who would then take it to the mainland, but she couldn't see the orange diesel when she arrived. Of course he's running late, she groaned. It's a good thing I'm not in a rush today. I guess I'll just have to wait here until he arrives. The station was bustling, and Madge enjoyed watching the different trains leave as they began their long journeys. Just then, a big silver tender engine with 3 funnels puffed into the platform. Oh dear, he muttered quietly. This isn't the scrapyard. I must have taken a wrong turn back near the drawbridge. Madge had never seen the engine before, and decided to strike up a conversation with him. You must be a new engine, she said, smiling. Welcome to Sodor. My name's Madge. What's yours? Oh, yes. My name is Merlin. Thank you for the warm welcome. You're probably wondering about my 3 funnels here. I bet I look quite out of place compared to the engines you're used to seeing. Not really, chuckled Madge. We have some pretty weird-looking engines on this railway, and you're far from the strangest. Merlin smiled. That makes me feel very good. Say, that's a nice load of rubbish you have there. Do you think you could help me find the scrapyard? I got a little lost last night trying to find my friends, and I'm a bit turned around. Of course, replied Madge. I can take you there if you like. Excellent! I've never been to Odor before. This will be a magical day. Madge was a little confused. Just then, Arthur puffed in. Who's your friend, Madge? He asked. I'm Merlin, said the engine proudly. Oh my, I've met 2 new friends already and it's not even noon. Ah, Merlin, that's a nice name, replied Arthur. I bet you're like a wizard or something, right? Well, now that you mention it, I can actually turn invisible. Wow, said Arthur. That's pretty cool. Madge was a little more skeptical. Sure. Anyway, ready to go to the scrapyard, Merlin? That sounds fun, added Arthur. I think I might join you 2, if that's all right. And the 3 friends rolled out of Vickerstown Station. Merlin was amazed at all of the cool places he got to see along the way. The island of Odor is much cooler than I thought it would be, he said. Yes, replied Madge, but it's the island of Sodor, actually. At last they arrived at the scrapyard near Edward Station.
Hello, everyone, said Reg. Ooh, looks like a special delivery today. I'm sorry it had to end like this, but you're going to a better place, my friend. Let me get you on my hook here.
What? No, Merlin's not for scrap, insisted Arthur. He's our new friend, Reg.
Oh, my apologies. I thought he was some sort of prototype thing with the 3 funnels and all.
That's all right, laughed Merlin. You aren't the first crane I've seen pick up an engine by mistake. Is this the right scrapyard, Merlin? Asked Madge. I don't think so, he said sadly. My friends aren't here. Maybe they're hiding somewhere. How about we try the ironworks, suggested Arthur. It's sort of a scrapyard too, you know. Maybe that's the one you're looking for. But when the three arrived there, Merlin looked sad.
No, this isn't it either. There's a crane on a turntable at the one I'm thinking of, and oh, this kind of looks like it.
Merlin puffed straight into the diesel works and stopped right on the turntable. "What are you doing here?" asked Den.
"What he means is, the diesel works is for diesels only,"
said Dart. "Come on, Merlin," said Madge. "It's time to go." The diesels glared at Merlin as he puffed away.
They seemed friendly, he said obliviously.
With no more options, the engine stopped at Vickerstown sheds. Arthur and Madge were quite worn out from the long day, but Merlin was still optimistic.
"We're getting close. I can feel it. Oh, my friends are going to be so happy when they see me."
"I don't think we know where your scrapyard is," admitted Arthur. "We've taken you everywhere we can here on Sodor. I think it's time you return to the mainland. You might have some better luck there." "Arthur's right," said Madge. "We've done everything we can to help you, Merlin."
"That's all right," he replied. "You Odor engines have been a big help. I just want to check one more spot."
Merlin spun around on the turntable and began to move towards the sheds. Just then, Mr. Percival walked up. "Arthur, there you are. Sir Topham Hatt sent me because you left your fish at Vickerstown all day, and now the entire station reeks. The passengers are most upset." "Oh dear, I'm terribly sorry. I'll go remove it right away." "And you, Madge, Norman is waiting for your scrap delivery, remember?" "Bother," she groaned. "I knew I shouldn't have left the station." "What's the matter with you two?" he asked. "Why did you both abandon your jobs in the middle of the day?" "We were trying to help this new engine, Merlin, find his friends from the mainland. I guess we got a little distracted." "And where is this Merlin engine now?" asked Mr. Percival. "He's over there, in the—" But Madge stopped. Everybody looked at the sheds. They were empty. "Where did he go?" asked Arthur. "He was there just a moment ago," exclaimed Madge. Mr. Percival didn't know what to think. "Either this is a very elaborate prank, or your visiting engine friend just disappeared into thin air. But I don't have time for this. Just finish your jobs before running off next time, please." Arthur and Madge were in shock. One moment, Merlin was in the sheds. The next, he was gone. "Well, he did say he could turn invisible," chuckled Arthur. "I guess we should have taken him seriously." "Now that's a magic trick if I've ever seen one," said Madge. "Too bad a good magician never reveals his secrets. I wonder where he disappeared to." And Arthur and Madge rolled slowly away to go finish their jobs. Inside one of the other berths, Merlin slowly opened the door and gazed outside.
"I can't believe it! I actually turned invisible! Just wait until Theo and Lexi see this, or rather, hear about this."
And Merlin puffed happily away to go continue the search for his long-lost friends. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 206, Dirty Arry. Although there are a few exceptions, like Daisy and Mavis, most of the diesel engines on Sir Topham Hatt's railway get left with the less desirable work, and this was especially true for brothers Arry and Bert. They had never gotten to pull a fancy train before, and this was making them cross. "I'm tired of shunting filthy trucks all the time," complained Arry one evening. "Thomas and Gordon get to look magnificent as they pull their clean coaches along, while we get stuck here doing all of the dirty work. It's not fair. We should get to pull those types of trains too."
"Actually, I rather like it here at the diesel works," said Dart. "There's not a whole lot of work to do, and we get to sit around all day."
"Yeah, I wouldn't trade this for anything," agreed Den.
"Sure, our jobs aren't glorious," said Sydney, "but... oh, I forgot what I was going to say."
You'll get tired of it eventually, said Arry, and I'm not going to put up with it any longer. Tomorrow morning, I'll pull a train that I finally deserve. You go get 'em, chuckled Bert, and I'll be right beside you the entire time. And Arry kept his word. The next morning, he and Bert were in the yard at Knapford Station, waiting patiently for their chance. There's the express, whispered Bert. Now wouldn't that be fun to pull? I don't see Gordon anywhere. We should take a chance and go for it. No, it's too heavy, conceded Arry. Even with both of us pulling, we'd never get it out of the station. What about Annie and Clarabelle over there? They're old and rickety. Not worth it in my opinion. Agreed, said Arry. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Just then, Stanley shunted an impressive coach onto platform number 4. That's a beauty, whispered Bert. You'd be crazy not to take that one. I wonder where it's going, added Arry. Who cares? It's your train now. You decide the agenda. Go get it, Arry. I'll join you in a moment. With Bert's approval, Arry moved slowly forward and began the process of inching closer to the station. After making it through a few switches, he backed up and was promptly coupled to the coach. Come on, Bert, he whispered. Get over here before we get spotted. Bert began to move forward, but was soon blocked by Stanley as he was coming back into the yard. Move it, Bert, he said. You can't be here in the yard during such a busy time. What are you doing here anyway? Bert realized he was stuck with no other way out. Just then, the guard blew his whistle at Arry's platform. It was time for the train to leave. Go without me, shouted Bert. Have fun, brother. Arry smiled and tugged at the coupling. It was a heavy coach, but with a lot of determination, he pulled it out of the station. Who are you talking to? Asked Stanley. Hey, where did that coach go? I didn't see Spencer come up and take it. As if on cue, Spencer puffed in and screeched to a stop. I'm sorry I'm late. I ran into traffic at the... Hey, where's my coach? Stanley, get moving, you slowpoke. I'm going to be late. You're already too late, laughed Bert. Arry's gone and taken your Duke and Duchess for a ride. You won't be seeing them anytime soon. Spencer was very cross and quickly rushed out of the station. He was so determined to find Arry that he didn't notice the diesel hiding in a siding at the coal depot. Good thing he's out of the way. Now this trip can really begin. It'd be wise to get off the main line so that nobody sees me pulling this fancy coach. I think I'll go take some backcountry tracks for a change. Arry was very pleased with himself and enjoyed every moment that he was pulling the special train. The Duke and Duchess were so engaged in their breakfast on board that they didn't bother to look out the window to see where they were going. Looking good down there, Arry, shouted Rusty. Say, when did you get a promotion? This morning, actually, he replied. Thanks for noticing. Arry continued down the line and decided to stop at a scenic overlook near the Coldy Fell Railway. He was all alone in the wilderness, and there was nobody around to tell him to shunt trucks. This is lovely. I don't care what type of punishment Sir Topham Hatt hands out to me. These few moments of peace and quiet have been worth it. Suddenly, a large explosion broke the silence. Arry nearly jumped off the tracks, he was so scared. He slowly moved forward and saw Sailor John with a crate of dynamite at his feet. Hey, you're that slimy pirate man, exclaimed Arry. We've all been wondering where you went. What are you doing out here? Questioned Sailor John. This isn't your usual route. In fact, nobody's supposed to be out here during this time of day. That's why I'm out here. I'm pulling a new train, said Arry bravely. And the question is, what are you doing out here? Why are you setting off your dynamite in such a peaceful area?
Well, normally there aren't supposed to be any trains out here right now, so nobody hears me testing my dynamite. But you're cramping my style, so get moving before I light this crate and throw it at ya.
But Arry wasn't going to be intimidated. You know, you could get into a lot of trouble if I tell Sir Topham Hatt about this.
Oh, you wouldn't do that. Nobody likes a tattletale. And besides, I'll be packed up and gone by the time you return.
But what's going to explain all of the debris around here? Asked Arry. And these big holes in the ground where you've been blowing stuff up. Sailor John was growing cross.
I'll tell you what, he said quietly. If you don't say anything about this to anyone, I'll let you in on a little secret. That mine over there, it's filled with treasure, and I need an engine to help me pull it out when the time comes. What say you and I form a partnership of sorts? You help me, and I'll help you.
Arry liked the sound of jewels and treasure. He could use those to buy his own special coach like this one, and he could pull it around on a daily basis.
Ah, yes, I see the gears turning inside your head. You're my first offer on this deal, so I wouldn't pass it up if I were you.
On the other hand, though, Sailor John had caused a lot of chaos on the railway recently. Arry liked to be mischievous from time to time, but even he thought that Sailor John was a bit over the line. No thanks, he finally replied. I don't want to be involved when this whole thing comes crumbling down. Better get moving, because I'm going to tell Sir Topham Hatt about this at the next station. Sailor John's smile faded rapidly.
Why, you dirty little diesel, this is an opportunity you're going to regret. Don't make me throw this dynamite at you.
Go ahead, chuckled Arry. Make my day. Spencer, why have we been stopped for so long? Shouted the Duke from inside the coach. Oh, you're not Spencer. Who are you? And where's Spencer? Arry realized it was time to leave. He quickly rolled away as fast as his wheels could carry him, leaving Sailor John and the dynamite behind. He eventually made his way back to Knapford Station, where the engines and Sir Topham Hatt were waiting. What is the meaning behind this, Arry? This does not look like a smelter's car to me, unless I am mistaken for some reason. Arry was just filling in for Spencer, interrupted Bert. The Duke and Duchess were ready to go this morning, and Spencer wasn't here, so Arry stepped up and did the job instead. Yes, agreed Arry nervously. Said Sir Topham Hatt. Seems a bit strange, but then again, we don't want the Duke and Duchess running late. Thank you for doing this, Arry, but I think Spencer can handle the job from now on. Sounds good to me, said Arry quickly. Come on, Bert, let's get out of here. And the two engines rolled quickly away back to the safety and comfort of the diesel works. Arry's discovery would have to wait until another day. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 207, James in a Jam. Come on, metalhead, laughed Lorry 3 one morning. I've seen little steam engines work faster than you, and that's saying something. Be quiet down there, shouted Cranky. If you can't wait for me to unload this package, then go ahead and leave without it. I don't care. Fine then, it's your decision. Have fun getting that cargo to the quarry by yourself. Ha ha ha! And Lorry 3 roared loudly away. What terrible vehicles, said Salty. I can't believe I ever endorsed them, sighed Cranky. James was infuriated. They're absolutely dreadful, he agreed. I thought they only treated me poorly because I was a steam engine, but this just shows that they're plain awful to everyone. It's about time somebody put them in their place. Lower that cargo down here, Cranky. Looks like I'll have to take it to the quarry instead. No, let me do it, insisted James. I want to go find something out. James didn't normally like pulling trucks, but he was curious as to what the cargo was being used for at the quarry. It's more building equipment, said Marion, but the shipment should be stopping soon. We've cleared the line all the way to the top of the mountain, and we won't be needing any more supplies. So you're basically done blasting now? Asked James. We're getting close, replied Boko. Of course, the quarry will still be mining rock and removing precious finds, but we won't be needing any more dynamite. So what are the lorries going to do when that happens? What are they going to deliver instead? Who knows, said Marion, but that will be the day. I'm a pretty optimistic steam shovel, and even they are getting on my nerves. This revelation of events made James curious. He spoke to the other engines that night at the sheds. Boko and Marion say they won't be needing any more of Sailor John's dynamite, he told them. So what are the lorries going to do instead? Maybe they'll deliver something else, said Edward. I'm sure the docks is always going to need help in that area. But Cranky and Salty don't want their help, replied Percy. I was just there the other day. Both of them can't stand the lorries. And any Sodor company won't work with them, added Toby. Sir Topham Hatt won't let that happen. He doesn't like them either. So Sailor John is the only one protecting the lorries, murmured James. He gives them delivery so they stay busy. But if the quarry doesn't need more dynamite, then the deliveries stop, finished Thomas. You might be onto something, James. What do you think, Gordon? All I know is that I have to pull the express in the morning, and you all are keeping me awake, he grumbled. The engines realized that it might be time to go to sleep. I won't let this go unsolved, whispered James. I'll do some more searching tomorrow morning. And James did just that. He arranged for Edward to take his trains while he puffed up the coast to Arlesburg Harbor. There was the dynamite stand, still packed to the brim as ever. Interesting. Sailor John is still making loads of dynamite, even though he knows that the quarry isn't going to need it. What is he planning? Oh, hello, James, said Oliver. What are you doing up here in Arlesburg? I'm looking for Sailor John, he replied. You haven't seen him snooping around, have you? Oliver couldn't help but laugh. Nobody's seen that pirate in a very long time. And believe me, if I had seen him, I would have told Sir Topham Hatt right away. But your guess is as good as mine. Come to think of it, I haven't seen that little boat that he used to ride around either. James was growing more and more interested. If he couldn't find Sailor John on his own, then he would have to pull him out of hiding. That afternoon, he traveled back down to Wellsworth to see Sir Topham Hatt. Sir, I have a bit of a strange idea. What if I were to pull the official Sodor dynamite train? Sir Topham Hatt was a bit confused. Well, James, I had no idea you were so interested in dynamite. But if you're willing to give up your coaches for such a measly alternative, then you must feel very strongly about this cause. James gritted his teeth. Yes, this matters more to me than my coaches, he said achingly. Very well, then. It hadn't occurred to me, but if we were to start our own train from the dynamite stand to the quarry, we could bypass those lorries and put them out of business. See, it's a win-win for all, said James enthusiastically. That settles it then. You have my permission to start this in the morning. I'll telephone the dynamite factory about these changes, and hopefully we'll get a response from that sailor man himself. James whistled and puffed happily away. That night he shunted 3 empty cars in front of the dynamite stand. These better be full when I return tomorrow morning, he shouted loudly. I know you can hear me, Sailor John. Come out, wherever you are. And James left to go get some rest. Behind the dynamite stand, Sailor John and George peeked out into the darkness. So, they want to try to get rid of me lorries, huh? We'll see about that. You know what to do, George. The next morning, when James returned, he was surprised to see that the cars were indeed full and ready to go. This is a good start, he said happily. Maybe we're finally getting somewhere with this delusional pirate after all. And he quickly set off. The first part of the journey was normal, and James was making good time. But as soon as he passed through Knapford, things took a turn for the worse. One of the lorries was blocking James's path on the main line. Look out, he cried, and he hastily veered onto the other track. Another lorry had triggered the coaling system, and there was coal all over the rails. James smashed into it, and then he hit a lone cranberry car that sent him spilling off the line and into a field. His train of dynamite was wrecked. My poor paint, cried James sadly. This coal and jam are never going to come off. Serves you right, came a distinct voice. There, standing before James in the field, was Sailor John. What are you doing here? Gasped James. Oh, you were expecting me. I bet you had this planned all along. George, he called, do it now. And George the steamroller rolled up to one of the spilled crates of dynamite. You're going to be an example to Sir Topham Hatt and anyone else that stands in my way, he continued. George's roller here emits extreme heat when he's been moving along at top speed. As soon as he touches one of the fuses there, this whole train is going to light up. James's eyes widened in fear. Help! Help! He called. He's going to blow me up! Somebody come quickly! No need to overreact, James, came Harvey's voice. I'm almost there. Shiver me timbers, it's another engine. Get out of here, George, and don't be spotted. And the two quickly vanished into the open field. James was both shocked and relieved at his good fortune. Later that day, when Sir Topham Hatt arrived, James told him everything. Well, at least we have an eyewitness account of the disaster, he said. It's unfortunate how this happened, James, but you were right. This dynamite stand did bring Sailor John out of hiding. Now if we could only figure out where he ran off to. But for the time being, James didn't care about any of that. He was just happy that his friends had come to his rescue. And that he was still in one piece, of course. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 208, Scruffy's Sweet Tooth. Harvey was busy bringing the damaged trucks from James's crash back to the yard. Whoa, what happened? Asked Fred. That freight car is destroyed. James derailed and took a couple of cars with him, replied Harvey. I don't know the details, but it looks like he simply lost control of the heavy load. Harvey meant well with his comments, but the trucks took them in a much different way. James still can't pull cars right, they laughed. We crashed him back then, and we're still crashing him today. Scruffy smiled. Well done to those trucks, he said quietly. Do you think now would be a good time for a rebellion, Fred? I think so, he replied. Word on the rails is that Sir Topham Hatt's pretty concerned about a pirate that's causing him a lot of trouble. We could easily start some confusion and will likely escape severe punishment because of that distraction. I say we do it, shouted Rickety. James is just the beginning. Soon every one of the engines will be finding themselves off the rails. The trucks cheered loudly. The crowd has spoken, chuckled Scruffy. All right, let's get started on a game plan, shall we? And the trucks began to put their thoughts into action. The next morning, Sir Topham Hatt addressed the engines at the sheds. James has been taken away to the works, he said sternly. He'll be back soon, but we must be vigilant. Based on what he told me, he believes that Sailor John purposefully crashed his train and intended to catch it on fire. We must not let this happen again. The engines were quite worried. I guess no engine is safe, said Toby. We must all keep a watchful eye out for anything that seems suspicious. Precisely. Please let me know if you catch any sight of this terrible pirate. We must put a stop to this at once. But instead of comforting the engines as he had intended, Sir Topham Hatt's words only sparked fear in their boilers. He could be anywhere, shouted Douglas. Sailor John will stop at nothing to bring this railway down. Double check your coaches, watch your passengers, make sure nobody's been tampering with your brake lines. The engines were so worried that they could barely function and complete simple jobs. The yard was a mess, and the trucks were loving all of the confusion. This is our chance, said Rickety. Nothing can stop us now. Scruffy was patiently optimistic. We'll get 'em good this time. They'll never see it coming. Eventually, Stafford brought the train to the station, and he placed it at the wrong platform. These aren't coaches, said the passengers. What is going on today? Just then, Thomas puffed up. Oh, joy. Guess I'm taking trucks today. He was so preoccupied that he didn't notice Annie and Clarabelle at the other platform and presumed his train had been changed. Let's get this over with, he muttered, and he pulled the cars away. The trucks couldn't believe their luck. Here they were, right in the midst of planning their biggest crash yet, and they had scored the most popular engine on the railway. Keep calm, muttered Fred. If we can get Thomas off the line, this will be huge. But the trucks could barely contain their excitement. Wait for my signal, whispered Scruffy. We've got one shot at this, and we don't want to waste it. Eventually, Thomas made his way to Ulfstead Castle, but was forced to stop because there was a cow on the line. Ugh, will you please move? He pleaded. I don't have time for this today. But the cow completely ignored him. Hey, Thomas, said Rickety, have you tried asking it to move? The trucks giggled hysterically. Thomas didn't find it funny and was uncoupled to go find Toby. All right, said Scruffy. When Thomas gets back, we push him right off the track. No more waiting. We're just going to go for it. Suddenly, Bulgy the bus pulled up, and out stepped Sailor John. Who's pulling this train here? He asked. And why are you running late? It's Thomas's train, said Fred, and we can't move because there's a cow in our way. Sailor John looked around crossly. Of course something silly like this had to happen to keep Thomas from showing up. I've been waiting for him, and I even set up a... You know what? Never mind. I'll try again some other time. You trucks probably don't even care, do ya? We love tricks, they squeaked. Tell us more. How about this? I'm in the need of some help in order to finish a job. I've been digging out some valuables from inside of Ulfstead Mine, and have stumbled upon some precious jewels and things. But I found more than I can carry, and I need some trucks to help with my great escape. Hey, I know who this is, said Fred. This is the pirate guy everybody's been talking about. Yeah, agreed Rickety. I recognize his voice. He sounds like a pirate. Sailor John rolled his eyes. You sure are a bright bunch. Anyway, can I count on your help in a few days or so? But Scruffy was hesitant. What do you mean by your great escape? Where are you going?
I'm getting off this terrible island, he said. I came here to find treasure, and now that I've got it, I'm leaving.
You can't do that, protested the trucks. You're causing chaos for all of the engines.
Oh no, I'm getting out of here if it's the last thing I do. But I still need some trucks to help me out. What do you say?
But Scruffy and the cars weren't interested. We need you to stay, he said. My friends are right. Your time is better spent causing trouble here.
Like I said, I'm not staying. I need help getting out of here, and you all would be the perfect crew.
Then there's no deal, shouted Scruffy. We aren't going to work for someone who's going to reduce the amount of turmoil on this railway.
I suggest you change your mind, said Sailor John, or else I'm going to...
But just then, Dennis rolled up. It's so annoying when engines leave their trains on the line like this. Guess I'll have to be the one to finish the job. And he coupled up to the cars. The trucks didn't know what to do.
What's the plan, Scruffy? Whispered Rickety. Should we wait for Thomas or take it out on this engine instead?
This is our chance, he replied. It's now or never. Let's go! As soon as Dennis started up, the trucks pushed hard against each other. The train rapidly increased speed and Dennis flew into the castle grounds. He rounded the bend and shut his eyes just before he impacted some cars at the Sodor sweet shop. Candy spilled everywhere and the trucks laughed and laughed. "That's it," shouted Scruffy. "It's about time you engines got your just desserts. Ha ha ha!" When Thomas heard the news, he quickly rushed over to survey the damage. "I'm sorry I didn't return sooner. I couldn't find Toby or Mavis to get that cow off the track. You don't deserve this, Dennis." "Well, better it be me than you," he replied. "You're the #1 engine. I'm just some random diesel that nobody cares about." Thomas was quite upset with what had happened. Lately, it seemed as though anything that could go wrong on the railway was going very wrong indeed. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 209, Flat Stanley. Sir Topham Hatt was preparing to leave Tidmouth Station when the station master stopped him. "Sir, there's been another accident on the railway. It sounds like Dennis has crashed with some trucks near Ulfstead Castle. I'll go fetch your car." "Bother," muttered Sir Topham Hatt. "All of this confusion and chaos is not good for morale, nor is it an acceptable way to run a railway. On top of that, I have my own personal announcement that I wanted to tell all of the engines today. Perhaps it would be better if I saved that for another time." "Here is your car, sir," said the station master. "Thank you. Hello, Winston. Let's go see what all of this is about." And the two made their way to Ulfstead Castle, where Dennis had crashed off the tracks. "You naughty trucks," scolded Oliver. "It's tricks like this that make you so hard to trust." "What a mess," remarked Winston. "It was all my fault, sir," said Thomas sadly. "I left the cars on the main line because there was a cow in the way, and Dennis here had to move them, and, well, yes, I can see what they did to him. Fear not, Thomas, it was an honest mistake. But I'm confused as to why you were pulling trucks in the first place. What about Annie and Clarabelle?" "They weren't at the platform this morning. I presume you had made a change to the schedule, sir." "Nonsense," replied Sir Topham Hatt. "I wouldn't dare take you away from your coaches unless it was for a really big deal. Say something like a special. But these are just ordinary trucks." "Well, then somebody must be taking Annie and Clarabelle, right?" asked Thomas. "I wouldn't be so sure of that. I didn't assign any other engine to take your train since I thought you were doing it yourself." "Well, then my passengers are stranded," exclaimed Thomas. "I have to return to Knapford and try and get back on schedule." "It's too late for that," said Sir Topham Hatt. "I'll telephone the station and have another engine finish out the routes for the rest of the day." But the only other engine available at Knapford Station was Stanley. He had been shunting in the yard, trying to clean things up, and was relieved when he got the news.
"You are to take Annie and Clarabelle to the docks," said the yard manager. "Apparently, when Thomas didn't show up this morning, his passengers hitched a ride on the express and got dropped off there by Gordon. Please go retrieve them and deliver them to their correct destinations."
"Yes, sir," whistled Stanley. "Oh, I haven't pulled coaches in a long time. This should be fun." Annie and Clarabelle were pleased that they finally had an engine. Stanley puffed very quickly down the line in order to get to the docks faster, but he was forced to stop at Wellsworth Station. "Bother, we had such a good run going. Why are we stopped?"
"There's a report of a potential obstacle up ahead," said Trevor, "although I wouldn't be surprised if it was just that cow that delayed Thomas earlier."
"Silly cows," muttered Stanley. "I think I can deal with this. Let me through, please."
"Oh, fine. Just take it slow in case there is some actual trouble up ahead."
But what he and Trevor didn't know was that there was actually debris on the track up ahead, and that the call had been made for a very serious reason. "What's this dynamite doing here?" asked Alfie. "It shouldn't be on the track like this." "I've alerted the station to stop all trains," said Kelly. "Now let's see what's going on here." Kelly lowered his crane and tried to pick up the crate, but as soon as he touched the box, a strange noise started. "Shh," whispered Alfie. "Do you hear that?" The two listened carefully. Ever so slightly, they could hear a quiet ticking noise. "It sounds like a clock," said Kelly. "But what's a clock doing in this crate of dynamite?" "Oh no," whispered Alfie. "I know what this is. We use it sometimes while blasting. It's a timer, and I think it's about to go off." Just then, the two heard Stanley's whistle over the hill. He was about to run down the rails right into the dynamite. "I've got this," said Kelly urgently. "Let me pick it up and move it off the line." "It's too late," shouted Alfie. "It's going to blow. Get out of here." And the two friends darted away just in time. Suddenly, the dynamite exploded and track pieces were thrown everywhere. When the dust cleared, there was a big hole in the ground where the track ended. "Look out, Stanley!" shouted Kelly. "Look out!" Stanley had seen the explosion and quickly veered off the main line as he rapidly descended the hill. "Oh no," said Alfie. "That was quick thinking right there, but I hope he can get his train stopped in time." Stanley was beginning to slow the coaches down as he approached the docks. Then there was trouble. Up ahead, Thomas was sitting on the lift bridge, peering intently towards the quarry. He said. "Stanley should have been here by now. Where could he be?" Just then, Ryan puffed in. "Hello, Thomas. Who are you looking for?" "Thomas!" shouted Stanley. "Look out!" But because Thomas was sitting on the bridge, it couldn't function properly and lift up. Stanley slammed into the obstacle at high speed. There was a splintering crash and then silence. "Oh no," whispered Thomas. "Is that... Oh dear, it is!" "What's going on?" asked Ryan. "Is Stanley okay?" But Thomas wasn't focused on Stanley. "Annie! Clarabelle!" he shouted. "Are you all right?" "We're fine, Thomas," they yelled back. "Just a bit bruised, that's it. But please check on Stanley. He's not saying anything." Eventually, word of the big crash reached the search and rescue center, and help soon arrived. Stanley was in bad shape. "We need to get him to the steamworks fast," shouted Flynn. "I'll escort you, Belle." And the two engines quickly whisked him away for repairs. Thomas and Ryan were in shock. "That was a heavy hit," whispered Thomas. "I hope he's going to be all right." Just then, Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "Thomas, what did I tell you about Annie and Clarabelle? I said to leave them to Stanley and focus on cleaning up Dennis's crash." "Yes, sir. I know, sir.
I just wanted to make sure that he got them to the dock safely. And Stanley would have done just that had you not been away from your job and sitting on this bridge here. Because of that, the bridge wasn't able to rise to let Stanley through, and he had this horrible crash instead. Thomas felt terrible. Stanley's going to need some major repairs, isn't he, sir? Asked Ryan. Yes, from what I've heard, Stanley is going to be out of service for quite some time. Ryan, you will have to help in the yard again until he returns. Thomas looked at the crash site. Another one of his friends had been seriously injured, and it was all his fault again. It's pretty obvious that I'm not a really useful engine anymore, he whispered. I'll be back in my shed if you need anything, sir. And Thomas puffed sadly away, leaving the carnage behind him. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, Wooden Railway Adventures, Episode 210, Hat Trick. It was a somber evening at the sheds. Thomas puffed in quietly and rolled into his berth. The shed door swung shut with a depressing thud. This is terrible, remarked Percy. I've never seen Thomas so sad before.
It's been a rough few days for him, murmured Gordon. I think it's best that we leave him be for now.
Do you think Sir Topham Hatt will take away his branch line? Asked Henry. Certainly not, protested Toby. Thomas has made a few mistakes, but what engine doesn't once in a while? But those 2 accidents he caused were quite serious, said Oliver. If another, less popular engine had done the same thing, would they even be on the railway right now?
Yes, remember what happened to Logan, added Edward. Sir Topham Hatt didn't hesitate at sending him away following that mess.
But Thomas is different, protested Percy. He's the #1 engine, and he's my friend. No engine should be immune to their misbehaviors, regardless of their status on the railway, said Duck. It will be interesting to see what Sir Topham Hatt does this time. Boy, the sheds just aren't the same without James and Stanley here, added Henry. I just wish everything would go back to normal. Inside his berth, Thomas could hear the engines talking outside. He let out a deep breath, shut his eyes tight, and tried to get some sleep. The next morning, the engines were awakened bright and early by Murdoch's whistle. There's going to be a big announcement at Knapford Station soon, he said. Sir Topham Hatt has asked all of the engines to be there. What could this be about? Asked Rosie. Maybe Sir Topham Hatt has found the man that caused James's crash, said Edward. Hopefully it's an update on Stanley, added Duck.
Let's get going then, said Gordon. That includes you too, Thomas. You can't miss this important meeting.
Reluctantly, Thomas puffed out of the sheds with the rest of the engines. At the yard, everyone had gathered for the big announcement, and Sir Topham Hatt and Mr. Percival were waiting.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me here today. I have a very important announcement that I've thought about for quite some time, and I believe today is the right time to share it.
The engines looked nervously at each other.
If you visited the mainland recently, you've undoubtedly heard a rumor regarding something called the Great Railway Show. I took some of my engines to that very same event many years ago, and we all had a splendid time. Well, that rumor is true. There is going to be a great railway show soon, and I am going to enter some of my engines into the festivities.
The engines were ecstatic. They couldn't believe what they were hearing.
However, there is another part of the show that I must also address. I have been chosen as a judge for the Great Railway Show, and I have accepted that offer. Along with some fellow controllers from other railways, we will be part of the team that ranks the engines in their competitions and hands out the awards at the end. Having said that, I will not be able to be the director of the Northwestern Railway and a judge at the railway show at the same time. The show requires a lot of time and dedication, and I wouldn't be able to juggle all of my responsibilities. Therefore, I've selected Mr. Percival here to fill in for me until the show comes to its conclusion."
"Oh, wow," said Edward. "Congratulations, Mr. Percival." "Thank you all," he replied. "I have a very big suit to fill, big shoes to fill, but I will do my best."
And remember, this is only a temporary arrangement. Once the show is over, I will return as the full-time controller, and Mr. Percival will go back to the Skarloey Railway. I'm guessing some of you have questions, but those must be put on hold for a moment, as I need to go to the steamworks and check on Stanley. Goodbye, everyone." And Sir Topham Hatt climbed into Winston and drove away. The engines were excited at the prospect of being a part of the great railway show. "What a marvelous idea," said Henry. "This should surely brighten everyone's spirits." But Thomas was still sad. It seemed as though nothing could cheer him up at the moment. Meanwhile, Sir Topham Hatt had arrived at the steamworks. Victor, Kevin, and all of the workmen were busy working on Stanley. "How are things going? Do you know how much time this is going to take?" "It's going to be a very long process," said Victor. "Essentially, Stanley's entire front end has been flattened, and we'll need to completely rebuild it." "Bother! I was hoping Stanley could compete in the shunting event at the Great Railway Show, but it doesn't appear that will happen. Well then, carry on, I suppose. I have to go investigate some problems by Gordon's Hill now." And Sir Topham Hatt drove away. Outside of the steamworks, Ryan was listening to the conversation. He had followed Sir Topham Hatt and Winston down from the yard. "George," came a voice, "are you here yet? You're running late, you big green—" "Oh, you're not George." "No, I'm Ryan. Are you looking for George the steamroller? I haven't seen him around." "Oh, well, thanks for that. I suppose I should be on my way now." "Hey, I know who you are. There are a lot of engines and people looking for you right now." Yes. Do me a favor and pretend you never saw me, and we'll get on just fine." "Don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone. I don't care anyway." Sailor John looked peculiarly at the engine. "You don't care? Well, something's obviously got you down. Why don't you give me the scoop while I'm waiting on George here?" Ryan grew cross. "It's that Thomas engine," he said. "This whole railway is messed up. He causes 2 major accidents and doesn't even get in trouble with Sir Topham Hatt. He always gets away with whatever he wants because he's the #1 engine. Poor Stanley got his buffers shoved into his face, and all Thomas cared about was his silly coaches. You should have seen how he reacted." "Wow, that is quite the story," said Sailor John. "Sounds like you're a bit mad at this Thomas fellow, I take it." "Oh, I'm more than mad. I'm furious. And not just at Thomas, at everyone. At Sir Topham Hatt and the whole island. I'd do anything to get back at them for what they did to Stanley." Sailor John about fell off his feet. "Now here's the engine I've been looking for all this time. I've got the perfect plan in place, but I need some assistance with the finishing touches. You help me, and I'll help you. What do you say?" "Sounds fine to me," said Ryan indifferently. "I don't even want to be on this railway anymore, and this is the perfect time to leave. I'll help you out, but once this is done, I'm leaving Sodor for good." "You've got yourself a deal," laughed Sailor John. "Well, we better get going. We've got no time to lose." "Agreed," said Ryan quietly. "The clock is ticking on you, Thomas. You're finally about to understand that your actions have consequences. And I'm going to see to it that you'll remember this one for a very long time."